everyone, it's Mari. I'm back today with more inspiration using the SCT Sampler. Today we're going to be taking a look at the September Sampler, and every sampler comes with this little card that details all of the different products that are part of this sample. This month's sampler includes Cartabella, Echo Park, Pebbles, and Close to My Heart products, and this is the 6x6 stencil that I received in my sampler. It's an Echo Park stencil. It's absolutely adorable. I also received this cut apart, and you could also use that text paper on the back if you wanted. These are all of the 6x6 papers that I received in my sampler. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I had so much fun creating with these papers with my 12x12 layout that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I'm just going to quickly flip through. I want to show you the A side and the B side, or both sides of these different 6x6 papers. And as you know, as paper crafters, there is so much we can do with a 6x6 paper. And whenever I purchase an entire collection or parts of a collection of a different company's paper collection that's come out, I always buy the 6x6 or 8x6 paper pad because these papers go so far. It's actually pretty amazing. And I'm just showing you here the texture on this particular or this set of papers from Cartabella. The Farmhouse Market collection is absolutely stunning. And the Cartabella papers do have that really cool texture to them. And I was just showing you that. Love the color palette in the Farmhouse Market collection. And then, of course, the Avenue collection papers, so pretty as well from Pebbles. So just had so much fun making with these different products. And I am going to take you through the entire process of making the 12x12 project that I completed so far using my September sampler. So those are all of the 12x12 papers. You also get 2 watercolor sheets, and these are from Close to My Heart. These are the My Crush Artistic You watercolor sheets, and they are so neat. You can see that there's clear embossing on them. The patterns that I got are floral, and the other one has kind of like an anchor on it. It's really super cool as well, with a little kind of wreath around it. And those are 8x6, so they'd be perfect for your 8x6 mini album inserts. Now, this is some of the other pieces that we got for embellishments, and these are puffy stickers that are absolutely gorgeous. I love those hearts, and all of these phrases are perfect for titles, embellishments that you might want to use for mini albums or your other documenting projects. I'm just showing you there how thick they are. These are all of the ephemera pieces that I received in my sampler. Unbelievable how many pieces there are that coordinate with those pattern papers. And I just had so much fun. First of all, I always have so much fun opening this sampler and taking a look at all of the fun little bits that you get to create with. So I'm going to spread all of my ephemera pieces out here for you to look at and show you how these all are going to just coordinate beautifully with the 2 different collections that were part of this sampler. So you can see that there's some that coordinate obviously perfectly with those Cartabella papers, and of course then with the Pebbles Avenue collection as well. And so just so stunning and so much fun. And if you can imagine the mini album projects that you might be working on, making cards, these are all perfect embellishments for card making, and your 8.5x11 layouts, your 12x12 layouts, and so on and so forth. And I just cannot believe how much value is in this sampler every month when I receive it. It's amazing value. So I'm just showing you there those sweet little, they look like brads. They don't have a back on them. They're just sticky. So that's perfect. You can just stick those down to your project to embellish. Now I'm going to be documenting these 2 photos today. These are 2 4x3 photographs in color. And I love how the colors of these photos coordinate beautifully with the Pebbles Avenue collection. And so that was the collection that I wanted to focus on using for this project. So what I wanted to do then was just pull out all of the Avenue papers and the ephemera pieces and the embellishments, and kind of work from there and see what I wanted to do here. Now, I really love this plaid paper. This diagonal plaid is just everything. I love the colors in this plaid paper. They coordinate perfectly with my photos, and I wanted to use that behind my photographs. And of course it's 6x6, so you cut that in half and you have 2 3 inch wide strips. And so I am going to go ahead and adhere those 2 strips of paper together to create a vertical line behind my photographs in that way. And that's going to start off my design. I really didn't have an idea of the design that I wanted to use for this project when I was starting. I'm just going to kind of work through that as I am going through this layout. So there you can see I have my plaid strip there behind there, and I also wanted to use this wood grain paper, and I wanted my wood grain paper lines to be going horizontal. And just because that's where the rest of the line that I'm going to create is going to be going across those photos in width. Now I'm taking this really pretty floral paper and I'm going to cut that in half at 3 inches as well. And that is going to provide another strip, and this is going to be a horizontal strip through my layout as well. And in that way, I'm going to kind of create a little niche for my title and a little area for my journaling as well. So I end up using the other half of that floral paper as well, eventually, as my layout here kind of keeps going and is unveiled, I guess. So now you can just see the idea that I have here for that beautiful die cut floral piece. I want to use that in between my 2 photos on the left. And then you can just see, like I said, there's just a really natural place for the title for my layout to go as I'm creating this design. I really love that happy. I think that's so cool. And it is a perforated die cut. So I'm going to show you here as we go along what I'm going to do with that to use that as part of my title. Now these gold puffy phrases are also going to be perfect to help me create the title for my project as well. So I'm just taking a look at that and I'm just thinking about what do I want my title to be? There's a few options. The cool thing too that you need to remember also when you're looking at these phrase sticker sheets is you don't have to use the words that they give you. You can actually change them. You can use the letters in different combinations and create obviously different words and phrases that go along with whatever title you would like. I just decided to use the title Happy and Time, and it obviously describes these photos perfectly. And then the journaling is going to go along with that as well. So this just worked for me, worked out really well with what I wanted to talk about in my journaling for this project today. Now, what did I use from my stash so far for this layout? Just a piece of white cardstock. That's my base for the layout. Now here I'm going to take one of the butterflies and I am going to just fussy cut around the outside edge of that. I didn't want too much white border on this little die cut piece, so that's easy to fix. Just going to take my cutter bee scissors and trim off that excess, and I did that for 2 of the butterflies. Now I want to use a little bit of a matte on my photo, so I decided to use a little bit of gray cardstock from my stash. I also could have used one of those other pieces of 6x6 paper, but I kind of thought I just wanted a plain piece, something just really neutral behind there with no pattern on it. So I just used this piece of gray from my stash. So there you can see my idea forming. Here you can see that I've got that other floral pattern piece going to the left of the photos. And here I'm just thinking about maybe adding a border around the outside edge of my layout as well. Maybe I'm going to use that gray cardstock that I used in my mat. I'm thinking about that. That's a possibility. And if I did that, I would just use it on the left side. And then I'm also thinking about sizing down my white cardstock base and using that blue paper around the whole outside edge. And you can see how that blue paper just really pops and it brings out the blue in that plaid paper from the avenue that's behind my photos. So I'm thinking about using the blue. I'm leaning towards that because there's also a little bit of blue in that floral pattern 6x6 paper as well. And that blue really draws that out. Now I'm also thinking about using a kind of an orangey coral colored cardstock from my stash as well to mat my layout. This is totally not necessary. I could have just used my white cardstock, but I just thought about matting things to just add a little bit of extra detail around that outside edge. Now I'm taking my scrapbook adhesives foam adhesive stickers here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of foam and dimension in that way to both of my photos, and I'm going to stick my photos down to the photo mat that I created there with that gray cardstock using these foam stickers, and in that way I'm going to create the dimension with my two photos. The layout is pretty flat, there's not a ton of dimensions so far, so I'm going to show you as we go along here how I rectify that by adding a little bit of dimension in different ways. The first way is with these foam squares behind the photos. For each of those two photos, I'm just going to take the release paper off the back of those sticky foam squares and get those photos adhered down to my cardstock. So here you can see I'm just going to start to, work on the rest of the layout. I've got the cardstock that I'm going to be using sized down for the different mats that I wanted behind that white paper. And now I'm just taking my pencil and I'm just going to make a little line on my plaid paper there so that I can see where I need to trim that off. Now I did take this down to my sewing machine and I added a little bit of sewing all around the white edge, the perimeter of that white paper. And now I'm just going to start to put my layout together, the rest of my layout. I know what my design is going to be. I know what pattern papers I want to use and layer and in what position I want them to be. I've got things kind of more or less trimmed down. I just have to trim my floral paper at this point, and I'm just going to go ahead and move that down so that you can see the whole layout again here and keep that in frame for you so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm kind of just straightening things out, and now I'm just going to go ahead and get that floral paper and slide that in behind there. And I just am going to use my T-square ruler here throughout this process to make sure that I have things straight. The thing with a layout like this is it's pretty linear, and so as soon as you have something awry, something that's not quite straight and lined up, it's going to be super obvious. So take the time to measure, take the time to use your T-square ruler or whatever ruler that you have, and just try to make sure as much as you can, make sure that things are straight. And I am notorious for not getting things super straight, and so I cannot always promise that things will be perfect, but I do try, and I do use my ruler to help me with that. Now here you can see that I've got the little butterflies all ready to go to put onto my layout as little embellishments. I love that little pop of black. I think the butterflies just go along nicely with the embellishments for this project, and I love how these little floral die cut pieces go nicely with that floral paper. I've got that floral paper all trimmed down. Everything there is adhered now. And I created some layers with my embellishments by using some foam adhesive to pop things up, and that is going to add a lot of dimension on my layout as well. Now these little letters here that spell out the word happy, as I mentioned earlier, are perforated, and so what I wanted to do was create more dimension on my layout with this title by using a little bit of foam adhesive on these squares. So I detached them where they were perforated, and now you'll see that every second letter will be popped up on some foam adhesive squares just to create that little bit of extra detailed dimension in the title. So I'm just going to offset the letters a little bit so that they do look a little bit more interesting, not quite as boring as just like the straight letters might be. And then I'm going to add the word time, that puffy gold phrase underneath the word happy. I'm going to use my tape runner here to adhere the letters of happy that are just flat, and then my little scrapbook adhesives, smaller foam squares for the every other letter to pop them up. So you'll just see me adding those alphas down, and I'm not worrying about all of the letters being lined up, like every second letter lined up with the other every second letter, if that makes sense. I'm not too worried about it because it's offset. It's supposed to be a little bit wonky. It's okay if it's not all perfectly lined up with the previous letter. So you can just see how that is going to look when it's all adhered. And it just looks a little bit interesting in that way. So now I am going to just kind of eyeball where I want that word time to go. And I am going to fuss around a little bit with that little die cut flower piece. I'm going to move it a little bit so that there's room for the word time. And then I will get that word adhered down and my title will be all finished. So you can just see me adding that in. I'm going to take the dot to the letter I. I'm going to add that to my project here using my craft pick. Just get it off of that acetate and get that all adhered down. And I am going to use some foam adhesive on that second little butterfly there. And don't be afraid to double and triple up your foam adhesive where you need to, so that it is, going to lay nice and flat. So because there is dimensional adhesive on that little floral piece, that means that I'm going to have to double up the adhesive underneath the one wing of the butterfly there, just so that it lays flat. And then I'm also going to just take the edges of the butterfly and just kind of like gently bend them up a little bit so that there's a little bit more dimension. And I'm just making sure everything is straight. Now, these little adorable puffy little gold hearts are just everything. I love these things. They're so sweet. And, a person could just have a million of these because they just make such a cute little embellishment. Now you can see where I want to do my journaling. And I've just added my journaling here. I typed this out in Microsoft Word. I used a font called Special Elite, and I've sized it at 11-point font. I printed that out on my printer, and then I cut it in strips with my guillotine trimmer. And now I'm just going to take my T-square and just make sure that I have for sure the first one lined up. If your first one is wonky and not straight, the subsequent ones are probably not going to be straight either. So I'm just using my liquid adhesive from Honeybee Stamps to glue those down. And I also added more of those little puffy hearts to the journaling area as well. And I love how this turned out. I think it's really pretty. And honestly, I have enough product left over to probably do 2 or 3 other 12 by 12 layouts if I want to, or cards or mini album products, whatever. Like, I have a lot left. Now I'm just showing you here that I am going to just take and lift up and rough up the edge of that orange, kind of that coral colored cardstock in my mat, just to give it a little bit of texture and dimension too, because like I said, I don't want everything to just be super, super flat. And that's personal preference. You wouldn't have to do that. If you like the looks of it really flat and without that extra little bit of texture, you wouldn't have to do that at all. Now here I want to show you everything that I have left. It's a ton. I have a lot left. I could make many, many cards. I can make tons of more projects. I haven't even used my stencil yet, and I am going to definitely do that. So what my plan is as I'm showing you this, I'm just going to share with you that I'm going to make lots of other projects with this, and I will post them in social media as well as I make more of my projects with the sampler. And did you know that there is a Facebook group for the sampler? If you have not checked that out yet, make sure that you do. And so many people put inspiration in that sampler group, and it's so fun to see what people make. I will leave the links to the sampler and all of the information to subscribe to the sampler in the description box below. And just remember that for only $13 Canadian, you can get this for 12 months, and there's no extra cost. It's $13. That includes shipping, and you get all of these products with the latest and greatest products that are out there in the paper crafting world. Thank you so much for stopping by. I had so much fun sharing this process with you today. Have an amazing day, and I hope to see you here soon for more sampler inspiration. Bye-bye.